whether or not they felt that there was enough support for his confirmation, that was in doubt. I think Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana said that he wouldn't bet his house on it. You had other senators like Susan Collins, who I spoke to from Maine, who's a more moderate Republican, who told me that she had real concerns about a lot of these allegations, particularly surrounding the House Ethics Committee, their investigation and subsequent report. And I guess now that is probably the big question going forward. What happens with this report? We know that the committee just yesterday deadlocked over whether or not to release it. Speaker Johnson has made clear, because Matt Gaetz is no longer a member of Congress, that it should be kept under wraps. But whether or not there is still interest in getting that information out there, I think remains to be seen, particularly now that Gaetz is taking his name out of the running. Is it as relevant anymore? And typically these types of things, obviously once Gaetz resigned, technically the Ethics Committee lost jurisdiction over that investigation. So we do know that members of the Ethics Committee will be meeting again early next month, but again, unclear what the next steps may be in terms of whether that report still sees the light of day.
All right, so Matt Gaetz withdrawing as a candidate for Attorney General. 24 hours ago, he was literally going door to door to meet with lawmakers. Sort of what we are seeing with Trump's pick in Pete Hegseth. Today, you had a chance to talk to Mr. Hegseth. What did he say?
Yeah, that's right. Well, he met with a number of senators this morning in Vice President-elect J.D. Vance's offices here on Capitol Hill. And again, he too was pretty upbeat on those meetings. In fact, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance told me that he thought the meetings were going great. But we do know, in talking to a number of senators, that this police report did come up during some of those meetings about an alleged sexual assault incident that occurred many years ago at a Monterey, California hotel, where a woman alleges that she may have been sexually assaulted by Pete Hegseth, that she's not sure if she was drugged, that she couldn't get out of the room where they were in a hotel, and that she alleges that there was a sexual encounter with him. And so I asked Pete Hegseth directly about that incident. Take a listen. Did you sexually assault a woman in Monterey, California?
I have, as far as the media is concerned, I'll keep this very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you very much.
Have you addressed concerns about your lack of testimony?
So again, Hegseth said that he had been cleared in this incident. What we do know is that he has alleged, and this is kind of through his attorneys, that encounter was consensual. We do know that it is alleged that he paid this woman an undisclosed amount of money after she had threatened a lawsuit against him back in 2020. So that is something that is of concern to some lawmakers here on Capitol Hill as well. I did talk to one lawmaker who spoke extensively with Hegseth, and he told me after reading the report it just sounded like maybe Hegseth and this woman were flirting. But I pressed back on that, saying, well, this woman said she couldn't get out of the room. She suggested that she may have been drugged. Is that flirting to you? Do you think these allegations are credible? And this particular senator told me that, again, he believes that this certainly was a situation that, in his view, he felt the report speaks for itself, but he feels like you need to read the full report, and that, part of it suggests that this may have been an encounter that was consensual. So again, it is really subject to interpretation here, depending on what lawmakers you talk to. Other senators I talked to said, look, we still need more details about what happened in this incident. But many of them feel, for the president-elect's part, that he is a decent candidate, that he deserves, the opportunity to be vetted. And so from that standpoint, the proceedings here on Capitol Hill continue.
Nicole Killian showing us why journalism matters and why asking smart, pointed questions really cuts to the chase. Thank you so much for talking to us today. All right, so we know Mr. Hegseth not alone on Capitol Hill. We know Matt Gaetz yesterday was not alone on Capitol Hill. He had with him none other than the Vice President-elect J.D. Vance with him. We also know, as we talked to CBS News political reporter Olivia Rinaldi, that J.D. Vance has been in recent days in West Palm Beach, Florida, having a voice in how the Trump cabinet picks come together. So let's talk about the fact that now J.D. Vance will have to signal back to the people at Mar-a-Lago that we are now down one candidate, and now another candidate, Mr. Hegseth, is on shaky ground. What's the reaction there in Florida?
Well, we're getting some breaking news reaction right now from President-elect Donald Trump. In a statement he put on True Social, he wrote, "I greatly appreciate the recent efforts of Matt Gaetz in seeking approval to be Attorney General. He was doing very well, but at the same time did not want to be a distraction for the administration, for which he has much respect." Trump goes on to say he has a wonderful future and he looks forward to watching all the great things he will do. So pretty quick reaction we're getting right now from the president-elect just moments after this announcement from Gaetz. And it's, to the question we've been asking, did they know that this was coming down the pike? This coming pretty soon after, might answer a little bit of that question of how soon Trump knew. But I also want to point out something at the end there where Trump says, "I look forward to watching all the great things he will do," because we know Matt Gaetz resigned from Congress after Trump tapped him for this so that he could focus, he says, on getting this approved and getting through to be confirmed Attorney General. But he hasn't been sworn in yet for the 119th Congress. In that resignation letter, he said he would not pursue the 119th Congress to be confirmed in there after all of this. But it does raise a question of whether he will pursue that or not. And to the question now, what happens next? We know that Trump was wrapping up really all of his nominations down here in West Palm Beach for his cabinet. He's been moving at a breakneck pace, announcing everyone from commerce and education this week to last week, Hegseth for DOD and Rubio for Secretary of State. But now this is a huge hole in his cabinet that he's going to need to fill. He had just 4 nominations left. That was Secretary of Treasury, Housing and Urban Development, Agriculture, and Labor. And we know that today he was meeting with a representative out of Oregon, a Republican representative, Chavez, for that Labor Secretary role. This now throws a wrench in all of that. They need to go back to the drawing board, back to those candidates for Attorney General and see who would be interested, perhaps do some vetting before that nomination and see who he could ultimately pick to fill that role. It's one of what's considered the big 4 serving in the cabinet. Beside President and Vice President would be Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, and Secretary of Treasury. We know that there are 2 outstanding now, and that would be Attorney General and Secretary of the Treasury that Trump still needs to announce going forward, Reed.
Matt Gaetz, out of one job, no longer a member of Congress, and out of the job that he wanted. Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much for being a part of our CBS fleet of reporters at the ready for this breaking news. All right, you're watching CBS News 24/7. Just to update you as to what has happened in recent moments. Of course, we know that President-elect Donald Trump wanted Matt Gaetz, the former Florida congressman, to become our nation's next Attorney General. Well, that was disruptive, to say the very least. That got Matt Gaetz side by side with Vice President-elect J.D. Vance to go door to door to talk to Republicans who would put Mr. Gaetz through the confirmation process in the midst of so many allegations, so many things in a House ethics report still unseen by the general public. And now 24 hours later, that statement on X by Matt Gaetz saying that he is choosing to pull himself out of contention to be the next Attorney General of the United States. We're also sort of seeing a congruent tone here. Matt Gaetz essentially saying he doesn't want to be a distraction, and then followed up by President-elect Donald Trump, who is also saying Matt Gaetz did not want to be a distraction, and therefore thanking him and saying he wishes to see what he will do in the future. So let's now go to Margaret Tlaib. She is with us right now to talk to us. I'm going to move over here because we've got her popping up on that screen. Margaret, nice to have you with us on CBS News 24/7, back with us once again. Any reaction from where you sit to the statement by President-elect Donald Trump? I saw it and I felt like it was a more tempered statement than we usually see when he's digging in his heels.
Well, I think he's seen the writing on the wall, at least for the last couple of days, perhaps always from the outset. This was always a 2-pronged approach. One was to see whether he could convince Republican senators to put their concerns aside or take a long break and allow Matt Gaetz to enter that job. But the other, more broadly, was to see how far he can push the GOP incoming Senate majority to bend to his will in general, right out of the gate. And I think as an early test, we have seen some limits here. There are a couple of other nominees that are going to be tested as well. And I think one big question now is going to be who will be the president-elect's ultimately successful nominee for the attorney general position. It's an incredibly important role, obviously, and Donald Trump has indicated that he wants, to some extent, to be able to use that role to go after what he sees as resistance or critics inside of government, or to end what he would describe as the so-called weaponization of the Justice Department. Others would disagree with that characterization. And we know that Trump already has named a couple of his own personal lawyers as well to roles in the Justice Department. So I think we need to watch and see where that goes. Is it possible he may seek to elevate someone like that? Would he seek to draw a Republican from Congress or the Senate? There are a lot of unanswered questions at this point.
Well, and it's one thing for you and I to talk about this on television and streaming on a broadcast that reaches every household in the world. But it's another thing to think about the people who are getting this news on their phones, or maybe in a coffee shop or in the doctor's office. And I have to think about them. Nobody has a smell test like the American people. And when you see Mr. Gaetz' statement on X and you see the president-elect's statement, you see two messages that seem to have some coordination. We'll never know if they were coordinated. But that is that this was a decision by Matt Gaetz. He didn't want to be a distraction. Do you think that's going to pass the smell test for the people of the United States, who are also aware that Mr. Gaetz was in the halls of Congress and essentially seeing if he had the support or if he didn't?
I think it's just a reminder that what politicians say, either as a coordinated front or on their own, and what's actually happening in reality and behind the scenes are often quite different. And there is President-elect Trump is sort of a master marketer. He is an intensely practiced television communicator, and he knows that sort of the shock and awe, move fast, and act very convinced that what you want is what's going to happen, is generally puts you on the best footing to make those things happen. But there are still limits about what can pass muster with this Senate or the incoming Senate. And I think we're beginning, to see some of that. And whether the message was coordinated or not isn't really as important as the fact that behind the scenes, Republican senators were telling Matt Gaetz and President-elect Trump and the Trump transition team, we can't do this one. This one is not going to happen. There's another issue, too, that I think bears watching. We're seeing both in this case and in the case of Pete Hegseth's nomination for defense secretary, although these are different facts, different candidates, different cases. The idea of this argument that if the Justice Department does not bring charges against you, you're therefore cleared of the allegations. And I think it's important to remember that in the history of the United States, the test for Senate confirmation of nominees, especially to a top-tier cabinet position, has never been simply, did you get criminally charged or convicted of something? It's also about conduct and whether your background makes you susceptible to being compromised in any way.
Nice to have you here on CBS News 24/7. For our viewers who are just logging on or joining us, we want to get to that post on social media by former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz and just let you see it for yourself. It's one thing to tell you the headline. It's another thing to show you where we're sourcing it. He says, quote, "I had excellent meetings with senators yesterday. I appreciate their thoughtful feedback and what he characterizes as the incredible support of so many. While the momentum was strong, it is clear," Mr. Gaetz says, "that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition. There is no time," he says, "to waste on needlessly protracted Washington scuffle. Thus, I will be withdrawing my name from consideration to serve as Attorney General." He went on to say, "Trump's DOJ must be in place and ready on day one. and then says, I remain fully committed to see that Donald J. Trump is the most successful president in history. I will forever, he closes, be honored that President Trump nominated me to lead the Department of Justice, and I'm certain he will save America. Let's go back to Nicole Killion, CBS News congressional correspondent. Nicole talks to many sources there on the Hill. Listen, the lawmakers behind closed doors saw that post on social media about the same time we did, and you're getting some new reaction.
Yeah, well, we just heard from Jim Jordan, who is a close ally of Matt Gaetz, has served with him on the House Judiciary Committee. And when our producer and other reporters asked him for reaction about Matt Gaetz withdrawing his name from consideration, his immediate reaction was, huh. And he went on to say that, unless this must have been a decision, that was reached by Matt Gaetz and or the president-elect, but he described Matt Gaetz as a talented individual, but he did seem to be kind of taken aback by the decision. Obviously, as I mentioned, somebody like Jordan is more of a booster of Gaetz, but, that being said, there are other senators here on Capitol Hill who feel like this wasn't surprising. It was going to be an uphill climb as far as this confirmation battle, especially given the drip of information that was starting to come out, whether that's, awaiting the potential details of this House Ethics Committee review, which again the committee thus far has made a decision or couldn't reach a consensus on whether or not to release its report. Over here in the Senate, you had Dick Durbin, the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who had asked the FBI for its file on Matt Gaetz because, of course, prior to this House ethics investigation, there was also a federal investigation that had been underway for some time related to allegations of sex trafficking. And while the Department of Justice didn't continue down the path of that investigation or file any charges against Gaetz, that was something that Democrats on the Judiciary Committee were seeking. So I say all that to say that a lot of lawmakers up here on Capitol Hill were after information on Matt Gaetz, and so it was clear that this was starting to become an avalanche that just couldn't stop in terms of some of these allegations.
So Jim Jordan says, in the world of newspapers, that would save a whole lot of ink in the printing for sure. In old Washington, Jim Jordan, others in the Trump camp would have all coordinated and talked beforehand. But we're in a new Washington. We are in disruptor Washington. Do you read his response as maybe that he did not know before this was posted on social media?
Oh, well, I don't want to speculate about any conversations that may or may not have occurred behind the scenes. I think the main thing that was striking to me in terms of Matt Gaetz' statement and taking himself out of the running is covering Capitol Hill and having encountered Matt Gaetz many times here over the years here on the Hill. There have been several instances where we have asked him about the ethics investigation, about the allegations made in this ethics investigation, as well as when the Department of Justice was conducting its own investigation into Matt Gaetz, and time and again he denied the allegations, he denied any wrongdoing, and acted like that he had no culpability. So the fact that he is taking this step back to withdraw his name, I didn't see anything in the statement of necessarily denying some of those allegations that have been out there, even though he has been very forthright about doing that. He has kind of acted that, hey, I'm being the one victimized here in all of these probes. And so that is probably what I found was most interesting, that he made this decision to step back when he has so staunchly defended these allegations against him over the years.
Nicole Killion, thank you so much. Nice to have that conversation with you. I have a feeling you and I will be talking a lot, maybe even in the hour to come. Thank you so much for checking in with us on that. All right, so let's bring in CBS News' Finn Gomez right now to deepen this conversation. And let's have the conversation, Finn, from the point of view of strategy. 24 hours ago, Matt Gaetz was knocking on doors of lawmakers. There was a ground game there. There was strategy there, even the vice president-elect next to him for those meetings. Fast forward to today, Pete Hegseth is having similar meetings and also some controversies following him. What do you see from a political standpoint? What does the Trump camp do now, knowing that Mr. Hegseth is having essentially the same process today as Mr. Gaetz yesterday?
Well, I think if you look at Gaetz first, Reed, if you look at that, I think a part of this, there was in speaking to some people close to the transition, that from the onset they knew that this that this pick would be problematic, right? Some of these questions about Gaetz have been swirling for a while. We've known about the House investigation, ethics investigation for some time. Of course, the previous federal investigation into some of these allegations as well. So we knew it was problematic. Trump wanted unconventional picks, he wanted unorthodox picks, but he also wanted a loyalist, someone who could come in and sort of clean house from what he calls the deep state, those who are what he claims are against him politically within the organization institution of the Department of Justice. But what we were hearing is that this also could be a tactic, a ploy to have him, he goes in, he gets knocked down, and then it could mean that behind him is a more palatable pick for AG, right? And that would get through, but you still get someone who just by contrast seems like a more palatable, more favorable pick that could get through the Senate, right? No accusations that we're hearing, none of the stuff that we heard from the House investigation. So like the next wave is what could come. I did speak to a former Republican official who was a high-ranking Republican official, justice official from Trump 1.0, who told me that they were concerned about who that person could be, just because of it would be somebody who was more sort of attuned to what the president-elect may want, and this is of course from a Republican official, and so they were sort of cautious about who that next pick would be. Also, just politically, as you mentioned, Reed, there's no doubt, and there's been no question either that Matt Gaetz has some political ambition in his home state of Florida. We all know he stepped down from his House seat because of this pick by the president-elect. But he does have political interest. We're hearing to run in Florida. There's a gubernatorial seat that's going to come up soon, gubernatorial race that's going to come up soon, and with that MAGA support, with the support of the president-elect, he could potentially do well there.
You speak of that dynamic. I guess if you boil it to the bones, it could be, okay, not this guy, but maybe this guy. Could that same dynamic then speak to what lawmakers experience when they drill down on Pete Hegseth, given the recent reportings out of Monterey, California, and that report that is also a part of the narrative?
I think with Pete Hegseth, it's a little bit different. I don't think they fully understood about some of these issues that are now coming up. I don't think they fully vetted this. To a degree, yes, and that's essentially what we're hearing. But Pete Hegseth was also very well known throughout the Trump world, very well known throughout the Republican Party and of course from conservatives because of his position at Fox on the weekends as being the Fox and Friends weekend host, right? One of the co-hosts there. And he's also been a very, very staunch defender of Trump. And what Trump wants a lot, what the president-elect wants, is he wants effective communicators in these top cabinet positions for him, loyalists close to him, people close to the MAGA base, and I think primarily that is what you're seeing here. So I think it's a little bit different, at least in its intention and at the outset. But with some of these new details coming forward over the last 24 hours, will this spell some more turbulence for Hegseth's nomination or his pick to head DOD? I mean, it could be. Obviously, these are some major obstacles that we're now seeing. That politically could be difficult, but from what we're hearing is that there's still a staunch defense for Hegseth, at least for now. But again, in the aftermath of Gaetz, let's see where this lands.
Speaking of Gaetz, I want to get your reaction. If we can put this up on a full screen, President-elect Donald Trump going to social media, timed release after Mr. Gaetz saying he is pulling out of contention there. Donald J. Trump there on social media saying, "I greatly appreciate the recent efforts of Matt Gaetz in seeking approval to be Attorney General. He was doing very well, but at the same time, he did not want to be a distraction for the administration, for which he has much respect. Matt has a wonderful future," says the president-elect, and he goes on to say he looks forward to watching all of the great things he will do. Exclamation point there on Truth Social by the president-elect. Your reaction, Finn?
Well, again, like that last part of it, it may not just be a favorable end to this, to this trajectory for AG. But it could allude to the fact that there is again maybe some political viability in his home state of Florida, right? Even though this has essentially gone down in flames, his candidacy essentially to be Attorney General, I think that there is still some political opportunities in his home state of Florida. That Trump has done very well there. Obviously, that's his home state now, of course, and where Republicans have been doing very well politically over the last few cycles. So that's something to watch, and especially now in this sort of Trump-looking party that they are now in this sort of where it's seemingly like traditionally this kind of thing could be the end for a political career. Right. But as we've seen, even with the president-elect, there is some political. It could be like a political Lazarus here.
Wow. You make me think of those Access Hollywood tapes. Fin Gomez, thank you so much for talking to us. Our team, we march to your drum and we appreciate your leadership. Thank you so much for talking to us. When we speak of teams, we know that there are many ramifications to this breaking news. So let's bring in CBS Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, any reaction from the business and the tech world to this?
Yeah, so Reed, my brain immediately goes to all of the cases that the Department of Justice has been bringing against big tech. Of course, we had that big ruling against Google where they won that saying that it has a monopoly on search. We got some recommendations from the DOJ yesterday, including pushing Chrome off, having to sell that off. They have a number of other cases against Apple. And so when you had Gaetz as the pick, you had a sense of, okay, this person has been very anti-big tech in the past, very pro-enforcing antitrust regulations. And so now that this is up in the air, I think the big question when it comes to how the DOJ would impact the business world, are you going to get someone from this new Trump administration that will be as hard on the big tech space? Now, of course, many of his picks in the cabinet thus far give the impression that that would be the trend. And of course, President-elect Trump has said many times in the past, so that this space does need to be more regulated. But yeah, Reed, that's sort of the question, who comes in? And then especially as artificial intelligence becomes increasingly more important and advances, the DOJ will be taking on those questions as well, and whoever runs it next, Reed.
Well, no doubt, and this goes without saying, big tech also has voices in the halls of Congress by way of lobbyists here. Do you think this will be seen by big tech, by their lobbyists, as sort of an in the game where they can grab and run the ball and try to get a second voice here for whoever is yet to come?
I think it's a possibility. I mean, certainly President-elect Trump has had many voices in the business world around him, Elon Musk being one. Certainly, he has interest in this space. But like I said, based on the other picks that we have seen from the president-elect thus far, it really does seem to be a bipartisan push, not just on the Republican side, but on the Democratic side for going against big tech here. So I would expect someone similar to Gaetz in terms of that perspective going after the big tech businesses.
Well, and we know the Trump administration incoming has used that phrase all the time, over and over, day one, day one, day one. From a tech perspective, which of those issues in the tech world that Matt Gaetz would have confronted on day one do you think still remain day one issues?
I think it's really this question of monopolies. There's a question around, does Amazon have a monopoly, against some of these, whether in the online marketplace, Apple as well is a big one. So I think the day one question is still the same, but I will highlight, Reed, and I think this is an important point. President-elect Trump has said in the past that he thinks that Google should be broken up. Of course, that's one of the questions that is very much in the news this week based on the DOJ's current recommendations. He also walked those comments back and said, well, maybe there's a better result, that Google shouldn't be broken up because we do need a very strong tech force in this country to go against anything that China has. So I think it's still going to be a day one question, but clearly his mind is not fully made up. So when we see who the next nominee for Attorney General will be, I think that will become a little bit more clear, Reed.
Kelly O'Grady, CBS News Money Watch correspondent, proving our point that on CBS News 24/7, we are at the ready 24/7 when news breaks. And that breaking news, Matt Gaetz withdrawing from Attorney General consideration. Let's continue showcasing our power of storytelling. CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd. Sam, walk us through why this is so important and what the position of Attorney General really does to impact our national security.
Well, let's just remember, this is not happening in a domestic vacuum. The United States has traditionally been a leader in pushing for the rule of law globally, and I've worked with several attorney generals. The attorney general is a huge figure on the world stage, talking about upholding the rule of law, talking about ethics, talking about law enforcement. And so when Matt Gaetz was first named as Trump's intended nominee for the attorney general, I do think that there were massive reverberations globally as countries that used to look to the U.S. Attorney General as a symbol and as a leader start to question whether the U.S. would continue to play that kind of role under a Trump administration based upon Mr. Gaetz's rhetoric regarding the Department of Justice, corruption, the role of law enforcement, January 6th, and more. Now, fast forward to Mr. Gaetz withdrawing from consideration as an intended nominee. And I do think it undercuts confidence in President-elect Trump's process for identifying personnel. He literally has hundreds, if not thousands, of people that he could have picked for this position, and instead picked someone who had not just a very controversial and complicated past, but someone who very clearly couldn't even make it, more than a few days, if not a few weeks, as a contender. So I think it signals globally that President-elect Trump's personnel process is not ironclad, and further just longer term sheds doubt on the role that the next attorney general will play on the world stage.
We also just got this in from Senator Lindsey Graham. We wanted to show it to our viewers. Stay with me and we'll continue the conversation.
I just issued a statement. He withdrew. I respect his decision. Appreciate him offering himself for service at that level. Now on to somebody else.
But, sir, we read the statement, but when you were talking with other colleagues on the Judiciary Committee from your party, did you get the sense that they were already going to be a no on him? Like,
no.
Is that why he resigned?
No, I got the sense that the process was going to be challenging, and he made the decision. You need to ask him. But here's what I would say. The president nominated somebody. They chose to not go forward. Now he'll nominate somebody else. All this interest about Republican nominees, I understand it, but where were most of y'all at when the Democrats were doing this? There was an allegation of rape by a woman against President Biden, and here's what I said. That's not the guy I know. Nobody did this. We sense that if you're a Republican, everything is true until you can prove yourself innocent. So as to Matt, he's withdrawn. Respect his service. As to what President Trump will do next, we will see. But I am committed to helping him where I can. I will not be a rubber stamp to his nominees, but I will also not engage in an angry mob mentality. Now, I have voted for almost everybody's nominees. And I can promise you, when a Democrat nominates somebody, I don't have this problem of walking down the hall with a microphone in my face. The double standard is atrocious, and it needs to stop.
What are you hoping to see? Thank you, Senator.
So some salt in his voice. First of all, in a very general sense, your reaction?
Unsurprising statements from Senator Graham. That was a pivot. And Senator Graham, who is a lawyer who has a long history in the Senate, was unlikely to criticize a nominee that Mr. President-elect Trump had made, and instead flipped this into a double standard discussion about Democrat nominees versus Republican nominees. I do think it's worth noting, however, that comparing the allegations against Representative Gaetz to an allegation against President Biden is really mixing apples and oranges quite a bit. However, Senator Graham clearly wants to look forward rather than look back. And it's true, all eyes are now on who President-elect Trump is going to name. And again, as a security professional, both from a homeland perspective and national security perspective, I am very focused on whether President-elect Trump will name someone with adequate legal experience, adequate law enforcement experience, and someone who wants to continue serving this country and helping countries around the world establish the rule of law. So I too am looking forward, but conscious of the reverberations that this latest episode has had on just our global standing.
Which begs the question, was it really about Matt Gaetz in the mind of the president-elect, or was it about what the president-elect wanted to achieve through Matt Gaetz, those objectives? And that really speaks to the conversation I had with Major Garrett just a few minutes ago, where it's perhaps not this guy, but then maybe this guy sort of dynamic there in Washington, D.C. The next person who's chosen, will it be about the person or will it be about those objectives? And if so, what are those objectives?
Well, I also think it begs a question of who is going to be a rubber stamp for President-elect Trump's nominees. Senator Graham is incredibly close with President Trump. As you heard him describe, however, he did make comments about President Biden's character when there was an allegation against him. And based upon the fact that Matt Gaetz withdrew from contention, it does signal to me that he felt that Republicans in the Senate were not going to be a rubber stamp for his nomination. So as President-elect Trump looks forward to the next Attorney General, he will undoubtedly pick somebody who aligns with his perspective on what he considers to be corruption at the Department of Justice, something I have not personally experienced in my years of working with them under various administrations, but corruption at the Department of Justice, as well as perceptions about January 6th, perceptions about Democrats, election quote-unquote meddling, and more. So he will pick somebody aligned with his interest, but perhaps this time he will take a closer examination of what kinds of controversial issues and allegations plague a nominee so that he avoids, frankly, another public embarrassment like this one.
A quick question and a quick answer as we wrap with you. Do you see this as the first loss for the incoming Trump administration politically?
I do see this as a political loss for the incoming administration and likely augurs more careful consideration of personnel picks in the days ahead.
All right, so let's talk about the days ahead. Thanking Sam and moving now to CBS News politics reporter Jake Rosen. Jake, we know it's early, but speaking to that what's next angle, are you hearing anything about potential replacements to come in line now that Matt Gaetz, and for those who are just logging on right now, Matt Gaetz taking himself out of consideration, who's the what's next?
Well, in speaking with Trump allies over the last couple of days, Reed, it really felt like Donald Trump was pushing for this behind the scenes, and I think yesterday was critical as Gaetz really hit kind of a roadblock. It was put to me by someone that there were already 10 hard no's against him, which means that that nomination would not have passed and he would not have been confirmed. However, I think we have to remember that the search had a couple other runners up, including Missouri Attorney General Bailey, who was a critical part of kind of the discussions behind the scenes as he led into picking Matt Gaetz a week ago today. But as of right now, Trump's still focused on picking through other people. Treasury still has not been selected, as we've discussed a couple of times. And Donald Trump, again, that pick of Matt Gaetz came on a whim. We knew Matt Gaetz flew with him that day, but 2 times. And at the end of the day, when they got off the plane, the news was announced. So we'll have to see really what comes out, whether it's today and they have someone lined up, or in the next couple of days, or the search really fully restarts at 0, and the search might take going into the next couple of weeks or even Thanksgiving.
Well, and you have to ask the question because there is this emerging narrative that perhaps the Gaetz pick was an early test of the Trump administration of the metal in the spine of our lawmakers on Capitol Hill, whether they would fold and give Donald Trump carte blanche or whether they would put their foot in the door and question things and say no. Do you think the fact that now we kind of have an idea of the stomach of congressional members for situations like this, do you think that that will factor into the conversations at Mar-a-Lago in the days and weeks ahead?
Oh, certainly it will. And again, when you have to remember the other picks, and Pete Hedgepeth on the Hill today in discussions, controversial, meetings going on right now as press is chasing senators through the hallways, a lot of them on the defensive around that pick for the head of the Department of Defense, in addition to Robert F. Kennedy, who has not yet had these kinds of meetings, Tulsi Gabbard, who will have to be on the Hill. There's a lot of political capital that the Trump campaign and Trump transition is going to have to spend on at least getting these people up on the Hill and having some of their views exposed in real time, some of their past comments exposed in real time, but also having to go in front of these senators. And again, they can only lose 3 people. And again, for someone like Matt Gaetz, it seemed like that was already a given that he was not going to get there. And Donald Trump has to consider that now the attention might turn to some of these other nominees who have kind of been able to hide from the limelight in the last week or so, as Matt Gaetz and in this new reporting we've seen over the last week from our team at CBS and other outlets about what exactly happened at these parties in terms of alleged drug use, sexual encounters that Gaetz had with minors, and paying them off for sex.
All right. Thank you so much for that live report from Florida. We appreciate that. So much to digest here as we take in the news that Matt Gaetz, now out of the job in Congress and also not getting the job that he wanted to be Attorney General. CBS News 24/7 streaming coast to coast and worldwide. Now 45 minutes into this breaking news. We're not done yet. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy. It's gonna be a ride.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour.
This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes. Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis. Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
No Ed to the headlines on Capitol Hill today, and here's the headline. The man President-elect Donald Trump wanted to be our nation's next Attorney General withdrawing from consideration. We have his post on social media that took a lot of people by surprise. So we're going to pull that up here in a second and show it to you. This is what Matt Gaetz says. He said he had excellent meetings with senators yesterday, appreciates the thoughtful feedback and the incredible support of so many. While the momentum was strong, it is clear that my confirmation, says Mr. Gaetz, was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition. There is no time to waste on a needlessly protracted Washington scuffle. Thus, I'll be withdrawing my name from consideration to serve as Attorney General. Just a part of his statement there on social media. The reaction coming in swiftly from Capitol Hill, not the least of which, Senator Lindsey Graham. Our reporters were able to ask him questions, but now we're going to go, it looks like, to Semaphore political reporter Shelby Talcott for more on this and have that discussion. Lindsey Graham had some salt in his voice about this and really characterized this in a way that really sort of sounded like this was an unfounded bit of scrutiny. But you're not hearing that by reaction from a lot of other people on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, I was, I'm talking to folks inside of Trump world, and people were surprised, although there's been really strong defense of Matt Gaetz internally. And I've been told that as recently as last night, his confirmation team was still being compiled. And so certainly internally, this took a lot of folks by surprise. I'm also told by one source that this was Matt Gaetz's decision, but what is unclear is whether that decision was prompted by Donald Trump asking him to step aside, or whether it was proactively Matt Gaetz coming to Donald Trump and making the decision entirely on his own.
Well, if you believe the statements by the president-elect and Matt Gaetz, they seem to want to send the message out that it was Mr. Gaetz' decision to do so. But you have to wonder what did it. I mean, if his confirmation team was being formed as late as last night, what happened today? We know going back in time that the House Ethics Committee did not greenlight the release of that House Ethics report on Mr. Gaetz. That's not to say that they wouldn't. They just said at this time we're not going to release it. Is there any potentiality that that report could have seen the light of day to the American people, and that would have been what caused this house of cards to fall?
Well, there's been a lot of questions over whether that report would get leaked or somehow end up in the media or in the public eye, regardless of whether they decided to actually officially release it or not. And certainly that would have made Matt Gaetz's confirmation process more difficult. And so I do think that there were thoughts about this. This was not something that was going away. There was a lot of media coverage over this. It was continuing. And for whatever reason, whether one or just the constant days of news cycle, this decision was made that it would just be better for the Trump transition team if he stepped aside.
And we don't know what was in that House Ethics report that so many people felt was so important for the American people to see. But there was a lot of reporting out there that really elevated what a lot of people at home would say was the ick factor. What was some of the reporting that perhaps just could not pass the stomach test for lawmakers on Capitol Hill that you saw from your perspective?
Well, of course, these allegations that have been surrounding Matt Gaetz for a few years now, surrounding, potential underage girls, that was a big factor. And I also think that it didn't help that Matt Gaetz had a troubled relationship with a lot of lawmakers. I do think that if he perhaps had a better relationship with some of these lawmakers, or didn't have a relationship with some of these lawmakers, they might have been more willing to stand by Donald Trump's picks, like we're seeing some of them with Pete Hegseth.
Well, and Kevin McCarthy comes to mind relative to bad blood between lawmakers, not the least of which Kevin McCarthy. Do you feel like that was a seedbed, perhaps, to lawmakers giving more of an ear to these allegations against Mr. Gaetz than they otherwise would have?
Certainly. I think, again, he has caused some issues for some lawmakers inside Congress. They are well aware of that. They have made it clear that some of them just frankly don't like him. And I do certainly think that that plays a role when you're thinking of who is going to get confirmed and who is going to vote on these confirmation picks. That does matter.
We appreciate the conversation. We have a feeling we'll be having many conversations like this. Let's keep in mind, Pete Hegseth is on Capitol Hill today. He is facing some pretty scurrilous reporting, to say the least, in the national narrative, things that he denies happened. But we could be talking about weightier issues in the days and hours ahead for Mr. Hegseth as well. Thank you so much for talking to us. All right, so as we've been saying, we have so many reporters on Capitol Hill right now, and they're doing their level best to talk to lawmakers to get reaction to this, not the least of which Senator Lindsey Graham. Here's what he said in a hall just a moment ago.
I just issued a statement. He withdrew. I respect his decision. Appreciate him offering himself for service at that level. Now on to somebody else.
But, sir, we read the statement, but when you were talking with other colleagues on the Judiciary Committee from your party, did you get the sense that they were already going to be a no on him? Like,
No.
Is that why he resigned?
No, I got the sense that the process was going to be challenging, and he made the decision. You need to ask him. But here's what I would say. The president nominated somebody. They chose to not go forward. Now he'll nominate somebody else. All this interest about Republican nominees. I understand it. But where were most of y'all at when the Democrats were doing this? You know, there was an allegation of rape by a woman against President Biden, and here's what I said. That's not the guy I know. Nobody did this. We sense that if you're a Republican, everything is true until you can prove yourself innocent. So as to Matt, he's withdrawn. Respect his service. As to what President Trump will do next, we will see. But I am committed to helping him where I can. I will not be a rubber stamp to his nominees, but I will also not engage in an angry mob mentality. Now, I have voted for almost everybody's nominees. And I can promise you, when a Democrat nominates somebody, I don't have this problem of walking down the hall with a microphone in my face. The double standard is atrocious, and it needs to stop.
What are you hoping to see? Thank you, Senator.
And just to clarify,
Lindsey Graham there speaking from the basement. Let's talk now to Axios reporter Julie Gaetz-Brupke on Capitol Hill. He's saying there's a double standard there. Are you hearing that same sentiment from any other lawmakers that you're talking to today?
Some of the conservative firebrands certainly feel that way, but I've talked to a number of moderates, too, that kind of have breathed a sense of relief since Matt Gaetz made this announcement. So he faced an uphill battle. I feel like there's a lot of shock on Capitol Hill that he dropped out this early. He's kind of had a tendency to be a fighter, and I talked to a number of members that thought he ultimately would have made it to a confirmation hearing. So it's going to be interesting kind of who Trump taps next. But I spoke to one lawmaker who said they feel it could be indicative as to how things pan out with some of these other controversial nominees.
Well, one of our previous journalists said here on CBS News 24/7 that as recent as last night, Mr. Gaetz still had that team assembled for confirmation hearings. It makes you wonder what happened in the middle of the night to cause this about face, to cause him to withdraw from consideration. But looking to the future, like Senator Graham said, what do we see in the future? Because surely somebody has to be a pick of the president-elect. There were second and third place choices. Any word on the Hill as to who they think might be teed up coming next?
Now, I need to check in with some sources on that, but having spoken to sources within the Gaetz orbit, they genuinely did feel they were picking up momentum with Donald Trump personally making phone calls. So it is interesting. I'm not sure how much the ethics report played in there. We'd heard Matt Gaetz dismiss the ethics investigation as being a political hack job for months and kind of blaming Kevin McCarthy for that. But I would imagine the next nominee is probably going to be less controversial so that they can get them over the finish line without a massive fight.
All right, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that while this news breaks about Matt Gaetz, we are also aware that Pete Hegseth is right now behind you under the same roof and talking to lawmakers amidst a scandal of his own, reporting out of Monterey, California, about a police report, something that Mr. Hegseth will likely be asked about in those closed-door meetings. Will this happening with Mr. Gaetz influence any of the conversations that Pete Hegseth will be having with lawmakers today on Capitol Hill?
No, I definitely think it could be a factor for him. Obviously, these allegations are very damning, and I think there are a lot of, especially moderate Republican women, that are going to want to kind of hear his side of the story on that and ultimately make a decision on whether or not they're willing to support him. So I've spoken with some members that kind of wish that there had been more of an FBI vetting of some of these nominees to kind of be able to have a smoother process there. So these confirmation hearings are certainly going to be interesting.
All right, we appreciate your being with us today as news breaks there on Capitol Hill. I have a feeling you won't be getting a lunch or a dinner break like so many journalists there today. Thank you so much.
Probably not.
When we come back on CBS News 24/7, we will go deeper with the CBS News Confirm team, a great asset in political reporting. You not only get the headline, but you get the what, the where, and the why, and the how. We go deeper with the CBS News Confirm team when we come back on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
but now through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered. There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Here we go.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
CBS News 24/7. When we see it, you see it, and we are seeing a whole lot on Capitol Hill. Here's your headline if you're just joining us. Matt Gaetz, former Florida congressman, once in contention to be the next Attorney General of the United States under President-elect Donald Trump, withdrawing from consideration amidst a great deal of scandal. He put that post on social media saying he wanted to do so that he wasn't a distraction to what is happening for the incoming administration. Now, this is also happening at the same time when another one of the president-elect's picks is on Capitol Hill. We're talking about Pete Hegseth. He is having meetings today with lawmakers much like Mr. Gaetz had yesterday on Capitol Hill before this news broke. And we had a chance to talk to Mr. Hegseth in the middle of those meetings. Today, we wanted to let you hear that.
Opportunity to talk to any senator that wants to talk to us.
Did you sexually assault a woman in Monterey, California?
I have, as far as the media is concerned, I'll keep this very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you very much.
Have you addressed concerns about your lack of
All right, so that is Pete Hegseth having meetings on Capitol Hill and responding to congressional correspondent Nicole Killian of CBS News to a very direct question, did you? He did not give a very direct answer before going into that hallway, followed by many cameras. So today, we are going to dig into a lot of new details into a Monterey, California police report that is commanding the headlines about what is arguably the next bit of difficulty in President-elect Donald Trump's picks to lead our nation. So let's go to our CBS News Confirmed team executive editor, Rana Tarrant. She joins me now. Okay, so Rana, a lot to unpack here. The details in that police report as they speak to the night of that alleged incident, what do they say?
So earlier we got a much more limited report released, and yesterday evening Monterey Police released a far more detailed document. Now it's over 20 pages long. We've been reading through it since yesterday evening, and it tells us a few clearer details about that alleged incident which occurred in October 2017. Now the woman who is accused Gaetz of sexual assault, she says she was introduced to him at a conference which was held for Republican women. Now, she alleges that in this report that he was acting inappropriately towards women. And the report says that she had an argument with him that evening by a hotel pool. Now, the fact that they had this argument was actually corroborated by hotel staff in this report. She says that her memory is quite hazy, but the next thing that she remembered was being in a hotel room with Gaetz. She alleges that he blocked the door, that he took her phone. She alleges that she said no quite a lot. She remembers that. She also said that she remembers him over her, that his dog tags were in her face, and she alleges that he sexually assaulted her. Now, in this report, Gaetz characterises the incident as a consensual sexual act, and he said that she expressed regret after the fact.
So there are also more details from the nurse at the Kaiser emergency room, where Jane Doe, as she is called in this reporting, requested a rape kit. What do you know? So this woman, the woman who has alleged that she was sexually assaulted, she actually went and requested a sexual assault exam on October 12th. Now, this was approximately 4 days after the incident. So the nurse who conducted this actually contacted police. She was the one to report it, and she collected the unwashed clothes of the woman and her underwear from that night. Now the police report says that this woman did report that she drank more than usual, but the nurse had said that the woman told her that she believed that something was slipped into her drink that night, but she can't remember much of the night's events, but she has this sort of hazy memory of things that happened. And the nurse says that she recounted these details to her of this alleged sexual assault. We also understand that there are screen grabs of text messages. What do they reveal, those screen grabs? And there's also that question about surveillance footage or audio recordings. What have you at the CBS News Confirmed team found there?
So these text messages, they are between a woman and an unnamed person. Now, this person seems to be quite close to her. They refer to each other in affectionate terms. So this, the text messages indicate she was at the bar. She's talking about Gaetz. She refers to him in a negative light at one point. And then the person who's texting her said it's very unlike her to be out this late. The woman then texts back. It's kind of an incomplete message. And this person messages back and expresses concern, says, "Are you okay?" And then there's no response. There are 2 missed calls. And then this woman returns to her hotel room at 4 a.m. So, as you said as well, there is audio mentioned in this report. And there's also video surveillance. Now, we haven't seen that. In fact, the CBS News Confirmed team is working to obtain that from police. They are refusing to release it right now, but they do describe it in this report. So the surveillance footage, it describes the woman and Gaetz and another person going into the bar. It describes them leaving the bar and going towards that hotel pool where they had that alleged argument. Now, as we said, police are saying that they are not releasing this, but we're hoping that they will in the coming days.
And it just begs the question, again, I think of the person in the coffee shop. Okay, so if all of this information is out there and the CBS News team has it confirmed, these are details that a prosecutor would definitely take into a courtroom. Why no word of charges in light of all of this wealth of information? What happened there?
So we don't know. We know that no charges were filed in this case. We know that from his lawyer, had said that they had reached an agreement after the fact. But for now, we don't know, and that is more information that we're looking into.
Ronna Tarrant, thank you so much for talking to us today here on CBS News 24/7. Final question for you as it relates to this police report. Do we expect to hear from the woman who is now known as Jane Doe? Do we expect or have any indication that we will get an idea of who she is directly from her?
So CBS News obviously does not name alleged sexual assault victims, and we don't know who this woman is. She has not come out and spoken publicly, and her lawyer has said that she won't be coming out and speaking publicly at the moment. So she is currently not speaking to the media, and as of now, we know that she has not been named.
And we do have some reporting that this happened in the proximity of a Republicans Women event there, correct?
Yes, so this is a local Republican group that operates in the area. We know that Gaetz was invited to this event to speak. We know that this woman was some way affiliated with the organisation. And we know that this event happened that evening where he had spoken.
Rana, we have about 5 seconds left in this broadcast. We know we'll continue this conversation on CBS News 24/7. We thank you for watching.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
CBS News, 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. We are following breaking news here on CBS News 24/7. A major development in the Trump transition. Former Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz is now withdrawing his name from consideration for the role of Attorney General. In a statement, Gaetz said, quote, while the momentum was strong, it is clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition. The president-elect had publicly stood by Gaetz as his pick for the role, despite growing controversy surrounding a House ethics investigation into alleged sexual misconduct by Gaetz. The president-elect responded to the news on Truth Social, saying, quote, I greatly appreciate the recent efforts of Matt Gaetz in seeking approval to be Attorney General. He was doing very well, but at the same time did not want to be a distraction for the administration, for which he has much respect. Matt has a wonderful future, and I look forward to watching all of the great things he will do. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth is on Capitol Hill today, meeting with several key Republican senators. He is trying to shore up support for his confirmation as defense secretary. And today we are learning more about a sexual assault accusation against him from a newly obtained police report. Republican Senator Bill Hagerty condemned the allegations following their meeting. Well, we have team coverage for you now. CBS News political director Finn Gomez is tracking these developments from our Washington bureau. And CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is on Capitol Hill. Nicole, I'm going to start with you. How significant is the fact that Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his name for Attorney General?
Well, I think what's significant about his withdrawal is that just a couple of days ago, you had President-elect Trump telling reporters that he stood by Matt Gaetz as his pick, that he was not going to back down from that. And now we're seeing kind of this 180 reversal with Matt Gaetz taking himself out of consideration. And this comes a day after he was here on Capitol Hill, pretty much from morning till evening, meeting with senators, trying to win their support for this position. And while he did acknowledge in the statement that he released this afternoon that he felt that there was momentum there for his nomination, privately there were some concerns here on Capitol Hill about whether or not he had enough support or could build up enough support ahead of any potential confirmation hearings early next year. So the fact that he is now taking himself out of the running seems to be an indication that he may realize that maybe that support simply wasn't there.
And Finn, I want to bring you in on this point. Do we know what ultimately, in essence, what was the straw that broke the camel's back and led Gaetz to pull out?
Well, I think just, the recent reports that we've been seeing, and just in terms of the, some of the details coming out of what Nicole just reported about these allegations and from these investigations on the Florida Republican. I do think ultimately it was the fact that it was just too much of a problematic landing through this very heavy political turbulence that we're seeing for Matt Gaetz. Like, it is rare in Trump world. I've been covering Donald Trump since 2015. Actually, the first rally I covered was in 2011 when he was flirting with a run then. But you do not often see any sort of acknowledgement of a mistake. You don't see a lot of I'm sorry's coming out of his first administration, Trump 1.0. It was very rare to see these kind of sort of public decisions like we just saw today. I do think it's just the fact. I did also hear, and I have to be honest here, that I did hear this, Lana, that according to some sources close to the transition, that part of this could have been a tactic, right? A tactic to have this problematic candidate for this very top position. To get essentially for it to become a distraction, a political distraction, to almost give cover to the rest of his picks for his incoming cabinet. And also, I spoke to a senior Department of Justice official from the first Trump administration, someone close to Bill Barr, the Attorney General there, who told me then, who told me that that they would have much rather had Gaetz than some of the other people on his list. We did learn, CBS did learn that how the origin of this occurred, because if you remember, Lana, he was not per our reporting, he was not on the short list for top AG picks for Donald Trump. So I think it's really interesting that he became this pick, and it was in part because of Boris Epstein, his legal advisor, who was speaking to him on Trump Force One and suggested him, and so it was done without a lot of preparation. And I think now what you're seeing is that Gaetz's ascension and trajectory has essentially gone down in flames, at least in this iteration of what he's doing here.
Now, the closeness between the president-elect and the former congressman was no surprise, but him being elevated to the head of the Justice Department certainly took a lot of people by surprise. And given that, Nicole, I'm wondering, how are members of Congress now responding to the announcement that Gaetz is out? And is there any inkling of what this might mean for the release of the House Ethics Committee investigation?
Yeah, and I would just briefly note to your point, I mean, I think, there's certainly different perceptions of Matt Gaetz, both inside of this body, but outside in MAGA world, if you will. I certainly saw Matt Gaetz a number of times on the campaign trail with President-elect or then former President Trump. And, he was received very well by a lot of Trump supporters, people stopping him for photographs, autographs, and the like. So, he did have some support and popularity among the President-elect's base. But, here on Capitol Hill, at times he was reviled because of his role in trying to oust former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. These allegations from the House Ethics Report have been circulating for some time. Obviously, they were conducting an investigation into alleged sexual misconduct on the part of the congressman. We know in talking to an attorney who represents two clients who testified to the panel that according to his clients, they have told the panel that the former congressman was part of these sex parties, that he allegedly had sex with a minor, and that he paid some of these women through Venmo transactions. And keep in mind that Gaetz has vehemently denied all of these allegations. But again, it's kind of been circulating and out there, and that's certainly what gave a lot of senators pause in terms of saying whether or not they would support his eventual confirmation. That being said, now that he has taken his name out of consideration, it seems that some senators are breathing a sigh of relief, saying that they believe this was the respectful thing to do, that they still feel he is a very talented individual. It was interesting, Jim Jordan, one of Matt Gaetz's colleagues in the House, when we broke the news to him, or some reporters broke the news to him, he almost paused and said, really? And seemed taken aback by Matt Gaetz's decision, quite frankly, and also praised him as someone he believes is a talented individual. So that being said, the reaction has been very mixed here on Capitol Hill. But for now, at least, it will prevent a lot of us reporters from asking questions about Gaetz, which, many senators are probably relieved because we've been doing this now for many days now. And many of them have said, look, we just want the process to play out, but now they can kind of move forward with a clean slate. And it seems in terms of Gaetz's position, he didn't want to be a further distraction.
Well, Nicole, I want to stay with you for just a moment because you raise a really important point, which is about these questions of sexual misconduct and allegations being a distraction. And now does the attention shift to Hegseth, the president-elect's selection to head up the Defense Department, because we know that there is now a police report that is out about Pete Hegseth and alleged sexual assault on his part. Tell us more about that. And we're not done talking about Gaetz just yet, but I know that you have some reporting on Hegseth as well.
Yeah, well, two quick points there. I mean, in terms of Matt Gaetz, just to put a button on it, obviously with respect to the House ethics investigation, we were able to catch up with the House ethics chair a short time ago. One of our producers did, and he basically said that this now means that more or less, the speculation about whether or not the committee should release its report into Matt Gaetz, in essence, is moot, because not only is Matt Gaetz, he's no longer a member of Congress, but now that he has taken his name out of the running, there doesn't seem to be the inclination on the part, at least of the chair, to make this report public. And, certainly the committee was deadlocked over that decision just yesterday. In terms of Pete Hegseth, look, some of these allegations also give senators some pause. I did speak to a number of them who met with him today. And keep in mind, these are two completely separate cases. In the case of, Pete Hegseth, of course, as you mentioned, there was this police report that was released by the Monterey Police Department in California detailing an alleged sexual encounter between Pete Hegseth and this woman. They met at a conference, and according to this woman, who was evaluated by a nurse, she says that she isn't sure if she was sexually assaulted, that she may have been drugged, that she felt her memory was kind of hazy in terms of what happened, but there was a sexual encounter that she described, and she was medically evaluated for that. In talking to some senators here on Capitol Hill, they said that this did come up in some of their meetings with Pete Hegseth, and when he emerged from those meetings with senators, I asked him directly about that report. Take a listen.
As far as the media is concerned, I'll keep this very simple. The matter was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared, and that's where I'm going to leave it.
Now, just to be clear, I asked him explicitly if he sexually assaulted a woman in Monterey, California, and that was his response, that he had been cleared. What we know from that encounter is that the woman reportedly did threaten a lawsuit against Pete Hegseth several years later, and reportedly he paid her an undisclosed amount of money. Of course, he is a Fox News host, and so reportedly he was concerned about his position at the network. And so while he didn't acknowledge that in that exchange there, that is kind of reportedly what happened in the years since that incident. But that being said, I did ask some senators whether or not they feel that this woman who is the subject of this police report should testify before the committee. Some senators believe, again, they want to see this process play out. They think more information is better at this point. But certainly I got some mixed reaction about whether or not she should ultimately testify. And I think that is something that we will continue to watch going forward should his nomination continue.
All right, Nicole, we know that you've been tracking down members of Congress, speaking with senators and even potential nominees, and have more to do. So I'm going to thank you right now, Nicole Killian, there on Capitol Hill. Finn, I'm going to continue with you, though. So you heard Nicole's reporting on Hegseth. Is all of this expected to have an impact now on Hegseth's confirmation? And more specifically, to your point about, was Gaetz a lightning rod that pulled the negative attention in that direction away from some of these other nominees? Might folks like Hegseth be regretting the fact that Gaetz is pulling out of the confirmation process?
Well, two things I want to say real quick here is that I just to go off of Nicole's reporting, I was on the Hill earlier myself today, and I spoke to Senator Ted Cruz of Texas right before this news broke. And when I asked him, did he feel that these two picks would go through, he said, yeah, he thought they would go through. It's a lot. That's where the mentality of some in the Senate, that's where it lay prior to this news breaking that he had dropped, that he was dropping out of contention here. I also did learn that Gaetz did call, confirming a report that he did call both President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Vance with his decision. And also the source close to the transition saying that he essentially came to his own conclusion here. But when it comes to Hegseth, look, I think, yes, with Gaetz, it was well known, right? We knew about some of these of his problematic baggage that he brought with him. Everybody knew about it, right? Others had talked about it, and there were these two investigations, and of course now, the federal one had concluded, but the House ethics investigation, as we well reported, was still open. But so yes, I had been told to some top Republican officials who told me that they had thought that Gaetz was sort of this political flashbang grenade, if you will, to draw attention away from some of the other picks, and just Lana, I think this is really important to, even if he went down, like if Gaetz was problematic, the likelihood of him not getting through the Senate was well known, that there was a good possibility that would not happen. He was also, he had no new friends, right? He did not have a lot of friends on the Hill. We remember the McCarthy debacle, that whole speaker race, right? Remember that very well. That was Gaetz who was the instigator there. So he did not have a lot of friends on the Hill, Republican friends. So so you see that, you're like, okay, the possibility of this happening, what we're seeing now, it wasn't a surprise to many people.
So,
however, Hegseth, is different. Hegseth came from Fox News. He was a Fox News, Fox and Friends anchor on the weekends, as you know. He was well-liked by the MAGA world, well-liked by Trump world, well-liked by Mar-a-Lago, well-liked by a lot of Republicans who went on his show. So it was different. And what Trump wants also, Lana, this is really important, above all, you've seen it across his picks. Like there's a lot of TV experience, there's a lot of TV background, and what he wants, Lana, is an effective communicator, and Hegseth is that. However, with these new revelations, that these new details from this 2017 incident in Monterey that have just come to light in the last 24 hours, this could be enough political turbulence to crash land this candidacy for a top cabinet post as well.
All right. Finn Gomez, a lot to get into there. And we will continue. Yeah, we'll continue monitoring all of it because, as you say, there are still other confirmations to be had. And Gaetz was a big flashbang, but he wasn't the only one. Finn Gomez and also Nicole Killian, who was with us before. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Well, we are staying on top of this major development with Matt Gaetz. And after the break, former Congressman Fred Upton, a Republican from Michigan, weighs in. So stay with us.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy! It's gonna be a ride. We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour.
This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
we're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General has withdrawn his name from consideration. Matt Gaetz announced the news on social media. The decision follows multiple investigations into his alleged sexual misconduct. And now there is a new question about who Trump will appoint to head up the Department of Justice. Let's bring in now former Michigan Congressman Fred Upton. Congressman, good to have you with us. You served the people of Michigan, representing them from 1987 up until last year. Michigan, obviously, an important state, but continues to be important. Talk to me, just first of all, how you're taking in this news and how the folks in Michigan are viewing this development.
Well, a couple of things. You know, Matt Gaetz thought that he could hide from this ethics report that was a couple years in the making. I served with Matt Gaetz Everyone around him sort of knew some of the episodes, the women, the drugs. I mean, he was bragging about it quite a bit. The ethics committee, though, he thought he could avoid that, which is why he resigned from this Congress last week, or just before the announcement was made, because traditionally the ethics committee, once someone no longer serves as a member of Congress, that ethics investigation just goes away. It never becomes public again. So he thought he could run away from that. It would not be divulged. He had the speaker's consent. The speaker said he didn't want to get it, allow it to be divulged. There was a 5-5 tie among this is a committee that's equally divided between Republicans and Democrats, 5 and 5, and you have to have a majority vote for anything to happen. And it was deadlocked. They were supposed to meet last week. They delayed it. They met again yesterday. It was a 5-5 deadlock. So there was a real question as to whether any of the lurid details would be released. And he thought that was going to be the end of it. But there's this little procedure in the House called a privileged resolution, where a member of Congress, with this, in essence, the support of their side of the aisle, can demand a vote on just about you name it. And it came out yesterday that, in fact, the Democrats were going to offer a privileged resolution, which meant within 2 legislative days, if they had the votes to pass it, and there would have been a vote first to table it, so it would never be considered. But if the votes were there to pass it, then, in fact, that ethics report would be released. And already some Republicans, remember, the margin is just 2 or 3 votes here, man. Already 2 Republicans indicated that they would vote for the privilege resolution to release the document. I suspect that there would have been at least another dozen or so, no matter how much pressure was put on. And that was, in essence, the straw that broke the camel's back. Matt Gaetz saw that report was going to get released. It was going to be terribly damaging. It was going to be released to the Senate, and therefore Humpty Dumpty could not be put back together again.
So, Congressman, it sounds like you believe that Gaetz withdrew from Congress to try and stifle this ethics committee investigation, and is now withdrawing from consideration for Attorney General to try and stifle the release of this investigation. Assuming that that's correct, is this a surprise to you at all that he has pulled himself from consideration, or did you think he was going to take this through to the end?
Well, no one wants to go down in flames. I mean, George Santos, you remember that debate and the last number of months, he did go down in flames because the House, in fact, did vote to expel him. Everyone thought that he might take the easy way out, protect himself to a degree and withdraw, because he was always a distraction to the proceedings in the House. But Gaetz, I believe that Gaetz, until he saw that the ethics report was actually going to be released, thought that there was going to be a pathway. You look at the Senate Judiciary Committee, most of the members, just like in the House, these are hard, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, they have their hardcore supporters that are stacked on that committee, whether you be a Democrat to the left or a Republican to the right, both the House and the Senate. So the votes were probably there in the Senate Judiciary Committee to pass Gaetz. But the question was then going to be, would he have the votes on the Senate floor to get done, knowing that you've got a couple of Republicans like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, a few others that were probably more than willing to say, no, we're not going to go along with this. But then you have the opportunity with the recess appointment. That's something that the Trump administration, the new Trump administration, was able to get a concession out of the 3 contenders for the majority leadership race. John Cornyn, John Thune, and Rick Scott all pledged prior to the vote that they would be open to having recess appointments. So the Trump team was playing chess here. They knew that Gaetz was going to be trouble, but they also knew that if the Senate went into recess, if he got out of committee, he actually could get a recess appointment that would have been good for the 2 years. So there was a pathway to get this thing done, but that was keeping the ethics report under lock and key. That strategy was pretty apparent that it was going to fail with the with the issuance of this privilege resolution that the Democrats were prepared to offer as early as today, which would have meant that the vote would have been just a day or two after Thanksgiving. So it wasn't going to happen. Gaetz did the right thing. He stepped aside. I know Trump said that he's got a great future. I don't think he does. But there'll be a different pick that'll be coming in the next number of days.
All right, Congressman Fred Upton, thank you.
You bet.
We are staying on top of this breaking news. We're in Washington with the fallout after Matt Gaetz's withdrawal and the next steps for the president-elect. Stay with us. I'm Lana Zach, and you are watching CBS News 24/7.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places. Bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Here we go. Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. We continue to follow breaking news. Former Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz is withdrawing his name from consideration for the role of Attorney General for the incoming Trump administration. CBS News political reporter Jake Rosen is in West Palm Beach, Florida, following the president-elect and all of the latest news for us. So, Jake, how significant is the fact that Matt Gaetz has withdrawn his name for Attorney General? He did it so soon, just after spending yesterday on Capitol Hill meeting with senators.
Right, and we know that the Trump campaign really was pushing for this. We know the former president and president-elect was making calls on Gaetz' behalf and encouraging this, but really the all-out brawl had not happened yet. There had not been official committee hearings. There had just been that initial slate yesterday of meetings. It appears to me, especially from the comments that we've seen come out from people like Lisa Murkowski, Lindsey Graham, that there just was not enough in the Senate and in these meetings to, at least 5 or 10 people, senators, who were not willing to go there with Matt Gaetz just yet and commit to supporting him. These people who have kind of been on the fence. And again, this is someone, Matt Gaetz, who hasn't made a lot of friends while he's been in Congress, someone who, again, has had to defend these accusations. And as we've learned more about them, especially in the last couple of days, it's hard to answer for that in addition to kind of the other baggage that he has. But we know to get him through really would have taken a lot of that political capital that Donald Trump really is going to have to use elsewhere now.
And talk to us a little bit more about Gaetz, because we heard the president-elect talking about his future being bright. But I'm wondering specifically what this means for Gaetz' seat in the 119th Congress, given that he did, in fact, win re-election and he resigned his seat in the current 118th Congress.
Right, and we saw what Donald Trump said, that he had a bright future ahead in that statement that Trump put out just over an hour ago, thanking him for his involvement in this process. Gaetz technically resigned as a member of the 118th Congress, which is right now, which is now through when all the members are sworn in early next year. Technically, because he won re-election, he could submit himself to be a part of the 119th Congress, although when you get back to the big crux of why he had to withdraw himself today is that ethics report in the House that would come out. If he is an active member of the House in the next Congress, it is possible that all this back and forth over whether the report should be released or not, because he's no longer technically an active member, right, that technically would be moot, and that report would probably and likely have to come out.
Well, let's talk about the other cabinet positions that are left to fill, because I understand that the president-elect now has 5. Any inkling on who the Trump team is looking at in terms of key roles in the incoming administration?
Well, we know that the battle over the Treasury Secretary head role has really drug out over the last couple of days and weeks since Donald Trump was elected. There's been a number of names reported, but we have not really heard anything concrete just yet on that front. We know, obviously, now Attorney General kind of gets reset to 0 as Donald Trump made that decision last week on Wednesday when Gaetz flew with him to D.C. for that trip that Donald Trump made to the White House. And again, in terms of these other roles, for the role of Labor Secretary, Congresswoman Lori Chavez-DeRemer, who is from the Pacific Northwest, she was planning to meet with Donald Trump at some point today to discuss the head of the Labor Department. We'll see what else comes out over the next couple of days, but a critical role that Donald Trump appointed right off the bat, someone who can be a disruptor, as Trump allies saw it, is no longer in the mix for Attorney General. He'll have to come up with someone else, and that's a very important role, as we know, with all the legal things that Donald Trump plans to do in terms of deportations and things like that.
I'm wondering if you, just off the top, have some names that are now being considered for the AG role.
No, and right now we're working through our reporting and working down here in West Palm Beach to see if Donald Trump is planning on doing those meetings today. But again, we're working on that right now.
All right, Jake Rosen, thank you. Now to Russia, where President Vladimir Putin has confirmed that Moscow fired an experimental intercontinental ballistic missile, better known as an ICBM, into Ukraine overnight. Ukrainian officials say the missile targeted the eastern city of Dnipro, which is the country's 4th largest city. A U.S. official also confirmed that Putin's announcement, saying Russia's looking to intimidate Ukraine and its supporters. However, they added that Moscow likely has only a handful of these weapons. Putin says Russia will issue an advanced warning if it decides to launch more strikes against Ukraine to allow civilians to safely evacuate. Earlier this week, President Biden gave Ukraine the green light to use American-made long-range missiles to strike deep into Russia. Biden also said Wednesday that the U.S. will give anti-personnel landmines to help Ukraine stall Russian soldiers on the battlefield. The International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants Thursday for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister, Yoav Gallant. The ICC also issued a warrant for Hamas's former military leader, Mohammed Dayef, who was killed in an Israeli airstrike in July. The judges say evidence shows both Netanyahu and Gallant intentionally deprived people in Gaza of humanitarian aid between October 2023 to May of this year. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office responded to the court's decision, saying in part, quote, Israel utterly rejects the false and absurd charges of the International Criminal Court. No war is more just than the war Israel has been